Hi Not Board Gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the latest game in one of my all-time favourite franchises. This is a prototype of Nemesis Retaliation from Awaken Realms by Adam Kwapinski, which obviously launched on GameFound about a year or so ago, and will be getting delivered to backers hopefully at some point in 2025. Now, I'm really fortunate to get this, of course I am. I'd like to thank the guys at Awaken Realms, and of course to Mark Monk over at Ninja Geek Games, who forwarded this copy on to me. Now, if you know anything about my channel, you'll know that I highly rate Nemesis. When I first got into the hobby, kind of 6 years ago, whenever it was, it's one of the first games that I sought out. And as you can see from my 32-year-old t-shirt here of the original Alien trilogy, the first 3 films, this was like 1993. I got the VHS collector's box set, which came in like a plastic face hugger, which I still have stored away in the loft. But I've got my 32-year-old Alien shirt on because I love Alien. I think... don't get me wrong, I think Aliens is a fantastic film, but my favourite film of the entire franchise is the original Alien. It's the ultimate haunted house movie. So, when I first heard about Nemesis, the original Nemesis, man, I got into the hobby just after the Kickstarter had finished, so I think it was my first ever trip to UK Games Expo. I ran the very first morning to the Awaken Realms stand and bought a copy of Nemesis, and I played that game God knows how many times now. Then, of course, a couple of years ago, we got Nemesis Lockdown, which, by all intents and purposes, is a mechanically better game than the original Nemesis. But I still prefer the original Nemesis purely because of my love of Alien and the fact that I just fell in love with the game when I first got it. So, Nemesis Retaliation, as I say, came out in GameFound about a year or so ago. It's gone through some rules tweaks, I think, since people first got to play it on Board Game Arena or Tabletop Simulator, etc. And this is the prototype for version 2.0. And what is it, or how does it differ from the from the Nemesis games? Real Freudian slip there, of course. Well, the original Nemesis game is set, you've got the set board, and then you're putting down the various rooms on there, which, you don't know what rooms are going where. There are certain rooms that will always be in the game and other rooms that, potentially go into the game. And as you explore this ship through kind of, having amnesia, waking up from hyperspace, etc., you're flipping over these rooms to find out the layout of the ship. At the same time, you're searching to try and complete certain objectives, and in the multiplayer game those objectives are not necessarily cooperative as well. No, because you may be asked to do dastardly things to your co-players, so it's kind of semi-cooperative because you're all trying to survive, but at the end of the game you're all trying to win, and generally that comes down to doing the nasty to your colleagues or your friends that you're playing with. Then we had Lockdown, which was set in kind of the on a planet, if you like, and you've got the facility that you're searching, and you've got lifts going up and down and the power going off, etc. Similar thing, you've got a static board with various rooms that you're putting out, and there are various ways to escape and complete objectives, but still carrying that kind of theme through, that treacherous theme through against your fellow players. Obviously in the solo game it doesn't quite work that way in either Nemesis or Nemesis Lockdown, because you have particular solo objectives. That kind of interaction between other players where you're trying to do them the dirty doesn't happen obviously in the Nemesis games. Similar thing for Nemesis Retaliation. There is, of course, the multiplayer game, which you will be given a couple of objectives, and you get to choose those objectives, and the earlier that you choose those objectives, then potentially the more cards that you can draw as well. So there's a real kind of dichotomy as you're trying to think, well, do I want to wait a little bit, see what objective I can complete, or do I call my objective early and therefore I get to draw some extra cards into my hand? So that happens here, but in the solo game that doesn't happen again, because you're not playing against anybody, so you can play it fully cooperative. You just have a slightly different set of objectives there. You don't have the 2 sets of objectives that you have and the tasks that you have in the main game as you would as a multiplayer. As a solo game you wouldn't have those. You get objectives that, depending on how many characters you play with, then you have to complete all those objectives to essentially escape where you are and then complete the game. Hopefully complete the game, because like all Nemesis games, it's got these contamination cards which you are going to collect potentially throughout the game. Chances are you're going to get contaminated throughout the game. I don't think I've ever played a game of Nemesis where you haven't been contaminated. And then you're going to feed them into the little red reader, and it's going to find out whether you are infected or not. This card is not infected. Excellent, fantastic. So that would have been okay for me. They're going to build up in your hand throughout the game. But the key thing about this game is the modularity of it. It's gone away with the static board now. So now you've got a frame and you're going to explore corridors and rooms throughout, and these are going to your board shape is going to be different more or less every time you play, depending on how you play the game and what your objectives are and what you're trying to establish. It's still got all that same kind of tension as you move through the corridors and you move into new rooms. You're making noise rolls because you heard a noise maybe, and those noise rolls are generally going to create a noise token, which is eventually going to lead to a certain number of aliens coming out on the board. And this is one of the key things, whereas Nemesis, you potentially against a singular alien, maybe a couple of aliens could come on the corridors. Here we have hordes of the buggers. They are literally coming out of the goddamn walls at you. And let me tell you, I played this game I think 6 times now. I've won once, okay, in all that time. But plenty of games where I thought, it started great, I'm going to do this, and then within a couple of turns everything just kind of dogpiles on top of you, and I'm getting swarmed by aliens, by drones, by adults, by drones, by lava, or the queen itself, which is coming out and kind of kicking my ass, and you don't kill the queen in exactly the same way as you did before. All the while I've got to manage my oxygen, and I've got to try and get the hibernatorium up and running, as well as complete my objectives as well, and stave off these aliens. It is a really fraught game that really builds on the tension of the original couple. So what I'll do then is I'll drop you down to the table, show you quickly how it plays. A couple of things to remember. This is a prototype. The game is obviously still going through levels of development. So these are prototype pieces, and components. Some of them are reused from previous Alien games. The minis are created for the prototype, so they're not by any means the final minis. And I should imagine a lot of this is still, or elements of this are still subject to change, but it should give you a decent overview on kind of the core differences between how this game changes from what you know from the Nemesis that you know and love. And is it for the better? Spoiler. It's my favourite version of Nemesis. So yes, it's a prototype. This is not a rules teach, and you'll forgive me if I get a couple of minor bits wrong that I'm explaining, because I'm reading kind of prototype rules, etc. But I think I've got more or less everything down in this game now. So let's drop you down to the table, show you a brief overview on what to expect with Nemesis Retaliation, how it works, and then we'll come back up for my final thoughts. Oh man, game over, man! It's game over, man! Okay, so here we can see I am kind of partway through a game right now. I have my combat engineer and my recon here, and look at this, they're already swarmed and surrounded by loads of aliens. Xenos, should I say. The Queen has not made it onto the board in this particular game yet, but I have had a game where the Queen came out quite early. So I think the key thing to notice is, first of all, the modularity of the game itself, of the board itself. Gone is the fixed board, because you will now have this frame which goes up from the left here and across the top, which divides the playing area into sections. We have section A, section B, and section C, and each of those has its own specific room tiles that's going to come out, and you also have a number of unknown rooms which could come out as well, basically, as you expand the board. And you notice here that there are loads of corridors as well, because you're going to get, bear in mind this prototype, as I say, you'll get these corridors which are kind of double-sided. Now on the one side, it's got a 0 on there. That means it's the side that you don't put down, so you don't know what the noise number, which is this here, is going to be. Is that focusing? There we go. When you flip it round, it's going to tell you that on a noise roll 1, you would put the noise on there. But they have all sorts of numbers on there. Some of them have apertures for doors as well, where you can put doors on there. And this is the thing about the game, is depending on your objectives and what you need to do, your objectives may be, I don't know, in the solo game, to unearth all room A and room C's, or maybe it is to make sure that the life support systems in A and C are both on, or that the hibernatorium is on. Then you have to complete those objectives, but the board is going to expand and change depending on the game that you play. So that's the major thing. Now, I'm sorry for the light reflecting above on the tiles. There's nothing I can do. I have a overhead light in here, and maybe I should have chosen a different map, but this is the map I've been playing with on here. So you're always going to start over here in the landing zone, and for those of you familiar with Nemesis, we'll all recognize the fire tokens and of course the malfunction tokens. Yep, put too many of those out on the map, it either burns or blows up, basically. So you know the score as that happens. So if you go here, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't see just here, but there's a mission track here, a mission task here, and that is in the multiplayer game. You will get a mission that you have to complete collectively, as well as completing your own personal objectives. There's also an objective choice area down here. Now this is for the multiplayer game, and as I say, if you choose your objectives sooner, then you potentially draw more cards into your hand. Here we have the timer track. You can see I'm only on round 3. I'm already swarmed by aliens at the moment. It could be round 4 actually. I think it should be round 4. We have here the landing zone ship, which is the marker that's you place on 10. This is one of the ways to escape, and that is going to come down into the landing zone. However, up at the top of the board, which you can't see up here, are a couple of anti-aircraft tokens, all right? And what you've got to do, pretty much like the engines in Alien, you have to find out whether they're active or inactive. And of course, you're going to shuffle those up so you don't know which one it is. Put those on the top of the board, basically. And if the lander comes down and you flip that over and it's active, it's going to blow the lander up. It's going to get rid of one of your means of escaping. Okay, here we have the self-destruct sequence. When that's activated, that's going to move onto the board, and therefore that is going to go, and that could be one of your objectives. You have to blow up the facility, or you have to blow it up and kill the people inside it as well. As we move along the top of the board, you've got a space up here for a robot card, all right? So there are a number of robot cards that come with the game. You're going to choose one of those and put it face down. And here we can see the little robot mini. There we go. Now this gives you some potentially additional actions as well. So when you connect to the hibernatorium and you activate the hibernatorium, so connect to it, you can then start using the robot. I should move the tile from there. And then you flip that card over and you find out which robot you've got and what it can do. So on this one, it's the military robot, okay? It's going to come with 2 tokens here, and I'll explain tokens in a bit. And when you activate the robot, there's certain ways that you can activate it. You can move it one time, or you can roll a burst die, and that's these purple die here, and I'll explain how they work in a bit. And you will deal hits equal to the result in a corridor adjacent to the robot, or if you roll the kind of alert symbol down there, you'll place, unfortunately, a malfunction token onto the robot itself. Then we come along the top here, we have, as I mentioned, the life support systems. They're going to start us off. And why does that make a difference? Well, it does, because what you're going to have to do in the game, and I'll show you a blank board here, is you're going to have to manage your oxygen. So if you end your turn in a room that, where the life support system isn't on, you can knock this down by 1. Now, depleting oxygen is not good, because what can happen is you can suffocate, and there's a token that will happen if you get to suffocate. Here we go. I'll show you one of the tokens. And it says here, you are suffocating. What does that mean? It says the next time you lose oxygen, you die, and you discard this token when you gain oxygen, or you end a turn in a section where the life support system's been put on. So not only are you managing the ongoing threat, not only are you trying to uncover your objectives, not only are you trying to not get as many Xenos interested in you as possible and build up your various items, but you've also got to manage your oxygen as well at the same time. We talked about the anti-air, air guns up there. Then over on the top right of the board, and you just see it in the top corner on the screen up there, we have the queen deck. So the queen, how you kill the queen here is going to operate very, very differently. There's going to be a nest that comes out at some point. You have some eggs over there, but essentially you have a queen's hits markers up here, okay? And once you get 5 hits on the queen, you get to flip over one of these cards. It tells you how many of the deck you will then discard, but it then gives you something else that will happen there. So there, for example, you discard 3, 1, 2, 3, and you would activate the queen, okay? Then you would reset that back to 0. You'd start attacking the queen again. And again, when you've got it up to 5 on there, you would flip that over. Oh God, don't discard any of the cards here, but you are going to activate the queen. And then we'd, do it again, flip it over. Look at this, these are all zeros, my God. And you can see there's different numbers there for how many cards you discard and what the effect is as you do that. So it's far harder to kill the queen. In fact, the whole combat system has been revamped in the game, and I'll talk about that in a bit, and I think it's revamped for the better. So, you know Nemesis, you know how the game plays, okay? You've got your players that you've chosen. We'll talk about the players in a second as well, and then you will deal yourself 5 cards from your deck, and then each player will take 2 turns. Okay, and those turns are going to cost cards. They're either going to be for basic actions, okay, which means you either play a card or you pass, or you discard a card, which means that you then get to, you can move. You can place a security token, I'll talk about those. You can fire a shot in a room. You can fire a burst in a corridor. This is really good. You can do a melee attack. You can use an item. You can activate the robot if you have the right kind of links to it. You can trade, or you can use your tactical belt, and that's on the board. If you discard 2 cards, you get to use the room action, or you get to make a move, a cautious move, and you put a security token down. Now, the little icons there mean those actions cannot be taken, of course, when there is an alien or a xeno in the room with you. So, let's talk about the characters themselves, right? So, for my characters, you can't see on here, I've got the combat engineer and the recon, but there are a slew of characters that come, and some will tie in with the original game as well. We have a UAV operator, we have a sharpshooter, we have an officer, we have a heavy gun operator, we have medical support, and we have a contractor. Then you also get to contractor scout, contractor survivor, contractor soldier, contractor captain, contractor xenobiologist, contractor laborat, and back to that. Now, for anybody that's played the original games, you're going to recognize those. That's a way to incorporate the original characters into the game itself. Okay, so as I say, when you're taking your turn, you're going to start your turn, you'll deal yourself 5 cards basically at the beginning of your turn, and then each character will take 2 actions. Same as usual with all the actions that you can take in Nemesis. There are ways to explore and ways to move. Of course, if you're moving, you can move into a room that already exists. That's absolutely fine. You're still going to make a noise roll. That's where we roll, of course, the yellow die. And we're going to roll that, find out where we've heard noise in the adjacent corridors. If you roll a particular number, so say for example, my wouldn't move through this corridor because all the xenos there, but my scout moved there and they rolled this die. There we go, it's come up with a 4, so therefore I would look around here for a 4. Already aliens in there, so that's fine, that doesn't matter. But if you come up with a 3, or with a 1, I would have placed a noise token in there. If it came up with a 3, because there's already a noise token in there, I would have drawn a token from the bag. Now, these tokens differ slightly to the other games. You see, you don't just get to put an adult out. What you would do is you'd flip it over, and it tells me I'm going to put 3 adults in that corridor, had that been the case. And this is where the real kind of the horde effect starts to come in. Same with the drones. When you get a drone, okay, which is slightly more evil, then you flip that over, it says here, I'm going to put 1 adult and 1 drone on there, but those have different numbers on the back. For example, 3 adults and 1 drone would come out on there. So it's going to tell you how many you put in those corridors, and that creates this swarming effect there. But that's only one way to move. This is a game about not knowing the facility, not knowing where you are, exploring this for the first time. So this is where we have the exploration deck which comes in, okay? So what happens if you're looking to move down a corridor to a new room? Well, let's say this guy's here, okay? Sorry, wouldn't be in the corridor. This guy's, the scout is in the door control room. Now, you cannot move down corridors that don't exist, and I'll explain excuse me, how that works in a second. But I want to move down this corridor. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn over. I'll spend my card to move, okay, for my action. Then I will turn over the card, and it says, place a room of the A, B, or C type, depending on the section this room is being placed in. Well, I know that this is a section A, so I'd take a section A. There are none left. So therefore, I would take this one, and I'll flip that over, and what do we have here? We have an emergency room, fantastic. And I'm going to lock that onto there. Okay, what it also shows you is where new corridors would go, right? So there's already a corridor leading from there to there, so that's fine. And it says that one would go down from here to here. That's not going to happen because this room did not have a corridor on it, okay? So if it says to go to a room that is already in play and it doesn't have a corridor connecting to it, then you wouldn't put it there. But if that room wasn't there, I would then put a corridor down there, not a room, I would put a corridor, and that creates a new branch to explore there. It also tells me that where I put my my recon guy, I'm also going to have to put a fire token as well. So that room's on fire, right? Then it says, reminder, I would place one security token if you're moving cautiously. Now, cautiously is to spend 2 cards to do that. So I would, in the room I'm moving to, I would place one of these security tokens. What happens there with the security token? Well, effectively, they stop the first attack towards you, okay? So you can put those at a maximum of 3 in each room if you want to. There's various ways of doing that. There's certain card actions that allow you to do it. Maybe the robot can do that as well. I don't know. But certainly on here, if you're moving cautiously, you can do that. Then it comes up with an action that you have to follow at the bottom. It says, close all doors around this room. Well, I don't know if you can see here, this one has a couple of green lights on there. That means there is, in fact, a door there that you can put. So what you would do is you would put that on there, okay? But let's say that this also had a corridor. Where's the room? There it is. Yep. Let's say this also had a corridor coming off up here as well. It would show you one up there. So what you would do is you would take a random corridor from here, okay, on the 0 side, and you flip that over, and we'd put that on there, and that creates a new potential path for you to go. Now, if that's got a room on it, then you would always put the rooms on the rooms facing. Sorry, if that's got a door symbol on it, you would always put the doors where the room is. So that creates how this kind of branching path works there. Then it says, invariably, almost always, make a noise roll. Fantastic. So here's where we make a noise roll, all right? Now, noise rolls are that you've moved into this room and you can hear noise. Unlike, I think, original Nemesis, if you did the cautious move, then you didn't have to make a noise roll. You always make a noise roll here. So we've done this again. We've got 2 2s and 2 1s. So if this is a 2 or a 1, then we are screwed. It's a 1. Fantastic. Brilliant. So that's gone on there, but because that has already got a noise token on, as I mentioned, we're going to draw from the bag and see what we put on. It's a drone. It's going to put 3 drones, 3 adults plus 1 drone on there. So let's just move these from here, okay? So that's a drone, and that's 3 adults. Now, each corridor can fit a maximum of 6. Okay, unless there's a queen in there, then it would be the queen plus 2, but it can fit a maximum of 6. So you can see this is how the game kind of really starts to, get to you, and really starts to pile on the pressure for you. So that's kind of moving throughout. Things like collecting the searching and collecting the items works very similar to the other games as well, but one of the key things that's changed here now is combat. So let's say that door isn't there, okay, and I wanted to attack the aliens in that particular in that corridor. Now normally that's going to be quite difficult. I'm in a room, but however, the game has now got something called a burst mechanism. So I would spend my my card, and I would do a burst action. And for the burst, we're going to roll this purple die. Okay, and you can see that it's got a number of numbers on there, and then it's got that, which has potentially got an action on it, depending on what equipment you're using. You'd roll that, there we go, and it's 2. And I would get to kill, potentially, 2 adults in here. However, with a burst, so these adults all got 1 health. In the corridors, this bad boy, the drone, has got 2. So I can either kill 2 of those, or, sorry, 2 of the adults, or I could kill 1 drone using that. There are ways that you can improve that as well, though, because you can also get grenades, which you can chuck into a corridor as well, and they're going to add to how much damage you do in there. So there's grenade launchers in the game as well. So there's ways to clear out these as they're coming in here. But let's say that one of the aliens has made it into the room. Now, when they're moving forward, and there's a way that that moves forward, and I'll show you that in a bit, you choose the highest powered alien that's in there, the most dangerous one. So in this case, it would be the drone that came in there. So say that drone has moved into my room now, or had already moved into my room, maybe it's done an attack, it's my turn to attack them. Now, if you remember in the original Nemesis, that one of the key things was keeping on top of your ammo was really, really important. You were constantly low on ammo, you're always having to find new ammo. It works differently in Retaliation, okay? So in Nemesis Retaliation, each weapon is going to come loaded with an ammo clip, which has got 2 sides. That's a full clip, and that's a half clip, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to roll the die, and there we go. No, you're not. What you will do, first of all, the first thing you're going to do is place a hit on it, okay? Bang, you've done that. So that's the first thing you do. Then you're going to roll a die, okay? And that die, if you have equal to the number, up to the number of hits that it's got, then you've killed it, basically, all right? But of course, the lower the hits are, the harder it is to kill. Once you start racking those hits up and doing it multiple times, right, then potentially you will stand a better chance of winning it. But that doesn't necessarily spend your ammo. But however, a lot of the weapons come with, let's have a look at this, here we go. A lot of the weapons come with a way to spend your ammo. So for example, the assault rifle here says after shooting I may spend an ammo to shoot again at the same alien. That means I would take that token and flip it over to its half used side, or so its used side basically. So that would give me 1 more go on it until such a time that I can defeat it. So it's only generally the last bullet that happens. There are certain dice actions, for example, this means that nothing happens. This means it's an instant hit, but there are certain weapons where that can be a bad thing. For example, on my combat engineer, if he gets that, yes, that alien would be dead instantly, but it would also spend the ammo token. So ammo works in a different way. It's not quite this kind of sparse luxury that it was in the previous game as well. In the previous games, as I mentioned, we talked about the security tokens as well. We talked about burst, and we talked about how you move and how you explore also. So I just want to show you now the character boards and how they differ as well. So here we can see the character board for my combat engineer. You can see that this just flips out of there basically, and that's the combat engineer there. So at the top you would have your plastic tray for your cards. I've just left it over on the other side. But they've also got a left hand and a right hand. And you can see in my left hand here, I've got a grenade launcher which has got 1 half-spent ammo clip in there. That would obviously come fully loaded when I get it, so there would also be grenades in there, but throughout the game I've used that. Action cards here, discard pile here, and over here in my right hand I've got my automatic shotgun. So my automatic shotgun has a particular power on it which says that, here we go, first of all it's going to do 2 hits, right? So at the beginning when I fire I would put 2 red cubes on the aliens, and then if I do the instant kill, so I get the kill shot, I have to spend one of my my ammo basically, so flip it over to the other side or discard. Here for the grenade launcher, we can see here that I can do, when I do a burst, I can use any number of grenades from this weapon before or instead of a normal burst, so that gives me some additional excuse me, additional abilities. Here is my tactical belt, and I've got 2 lots of oxygen, 1 ammo, and 1 first aid, which is going to give me 2 health back. That is an action you can use here. You would spend a card, you get to use one of those tokens, that will help me boost up my oxygen if needed, or it would also give me my health. You can put grenades in there. You get to choose what equipment you're putting in your tactical belt. One of the biggest differences though is how health is tracked. So if you remember the original Alien, you got those cubes going down to serious wound, etc. Well, here you have a health track, and this is this here, and it will start up at the top. Okay, you may also get some starting equipment that you can put down in the bottom here, and you're going to choose some of that at the beginning of the game. That's little grayed out X in it. That means I can put the health on there. But you can see that my combat engineer has already taken a serious wound. He's got a leg wound here, which means that when I move from a room with an alien, it costs me 1 more to move. And you can see that it's got some red X's on there, which slide nicely underneath my player board. As soon as you take a serious wound, and it's got these red hexes on it, you cannot then have your health in that area. So if I'm up here and I take a serious wound, my health would instantly move down to there. And of course, you're going to move right down to the end. And then if you get to the end, you're going to die, basically, if it goes down to the end. And you can also see down at the corner here, we have the oxygen meter, which allows you to either increase or decrease your oxygen depending on what you're doing. So there's a lot more interaction, a lot more choice on the player boards, a lot more agency in what you are doing to try and complete, but also be in control of your own destiny a little bit. I've certainly had games where I've gone through maybe half of it without getting serious wounds, and then all of a sudden it started happening. I've had games where these serious wounds started pretty much right at the beginning and just got worse from there. So now let's talk about the cards and how the cards work. The other cards, we're talking the event cards and the attack cards and how they differ from the other games of Nemesis. Freudian slip again. Okay, so 2 main decks of cards kind of which differ from the game that you will know are going to be the attack cards and the Prime Blood event cards. Okay, so this is the Prime Bloods. There are obviously other aliens or other xenomorphs I've got here which I've not played with yet. I think it's another expansion. Is it Carnomorphs? It's not Carnomorphs. I can't remember what it's called, but there's another expansion here which I've not played with. Which I've been playing with the base game so far. But look at the attack cards. These again, differ ever so slightly from what we've seen before. So when an alien either moves into your room or gets activated or needs to attack you, you're going to flip one of these cards over, and it's got here exactly what type of xenomorph is coming for you. So this one is, for example, for a bite, the larva's not going to do anything on this. The adult, the drone, and the queen, both say if you're heavily injured, you die. Heavily injured means you've taken 3 serious injuries. Otherwise, you gain 1 serious wound and 1 contamination card. But if we look at some of these others, we have a miss. Nothing happens. I've never drawn this bloody card in the game. And of course, it's in the bottom of my deck. You've got a tail attack. And this is where it gets different. So the adult and a drone means that I would lose 1 health and gain 1 contamination. Or the queen, if I'm injured, that's the same as on the other. We've got infecting, which has got, I would lose 2 in health. Or here we go, if I don't have a larva on my character board, if it's a queen that gets activated, then place 1 here. So you can see these are ever so slightly different to how they played before. However, when we look at the event cards which come in the game, this is where, again, it just adds another layer of tension. So these events, you're going to flip one over each round. It's going to tell you what's going to happen, okay? And you follow this from top to bottom. So first of all, we've got damaging fire. And this says all aliens in each corridor that is in that orientation move, and they will move 1 space. So if they're in a corridor, they will then move to a room going towards the players. And then it says, then all aliens in every room move. So you're going to move some of them into a corridor. Then if they're in a room, they're going to move again. They're going to continue creeping towards you. Then we go down to the second part here. We're going to place a malfunction token in each room with a fire. And from each room with a fire, spread it through corridors with the lowest noise value. So that fire is going to spread and start moving out. We all know what happens there. And there we go. Each character in a room without security token resolves hazard. Well, what is hazard? Hazard is on the noise die, which is this here. And what that means is you're going to draw from the bag, and this is the time that you don't look at the numbers on the back, and whatever token you bring out is going to activate or come into your room, basically. So it's a way, again, that you can suddenly have these surprise attacks happening in the event phase for you. Let's have a look at another Prime Blood event. We have the Rise of the Machine. Here we go. All aliens in corridors of this orientation move. Then all aliens in every room move. Yeah, they're going to continue coming for you. These things are after you. And you're going to place a malfunction token on the robot. Then a malfunction token in each room with the a malfunction token in a room with a robot, and then each character in that room loses 2 health. And then you're going to place a noise marker on each unexplored corridor without a noise marker. So remember, unexplored corridors where you've attached them to a room but you've not explored the room next to it. It's going to do that. So the noise builds up throughout the game as well. So you've got this kind of constantly pervading sense of attack and doom that's coming at you. And that's, I say, it's not a rules teach, but that is pretty much, a lot of the major changes that you get in Nemesis Retaliation from the other Nemesis games. There's a different way that the Queen activates, and it's a lot harder to kill the Queen. The different ways that the xenomorphs activate and come on the board. There's a number of ways they can come on the board now, be that through an event phase, or be that through a noise roll, or activating the hazard on a noise roll as well. There's a number of different ways that they come. There's far higher propensity that they're going to start swarming at you now. The real great thing about it is, of course, the way that ammo is used now. It's not that sparse resource that it always was, that you're always finding for. I think it'd be fairly kind of okay to try and incorporate this kind of system into the earlier iterations of Nemesis, because it could potentially work a little bit better. We have the robot, which is like an additional help that's there as well. But it's a lot of if you love Nemesis, it's a lot of the same things, but a lot of it's been streamlined. It feels like a much less arduous process in terms of managing the game itself. It feels a lot more streamlined, a lot tighter, and a lot bloody harder as well. So there we go. I say not a rules teach by any stretch of the imagination, just an overview on what to expect in Nemesis Retaliation. This is version 2.0. And there we go. Look, that's a really brief overview on what to expect. The thing about the Nemesis games is that, there are some playthroughs through there, but it's, it is a game that builds a little bit more as you go along, and I could drop you in and show you a couple of rounds of it, but it could well be that, given the nature of the game, that I could get killed within that first round as well. So I thought it was best just to show you a bit of a brief overview on what the changes are and what to expect in the game of Nemesis Retaliation. I will make no bones about it. I am as I mentioned at the beginning, a huge Nemesis fan. So excuse me. What Adam's done here with Retaliation is still keep that core concept of Nemesis exactly the same. The constant dread that is there, the constant potential you could lose the game at any one point, the constant feeling that you are always going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, the unfairness of the contamination cards, the treachery that you have if you're playing multiplayer against your co-players, the fact that people could be kicked out of the game early, all of the reasons that people potentially don't like Nemesis are still there. And for me, I love Nemesis because of, not necessarily in spite of those reasons. So this has now kind of, as I say, it's streamlined the gameplay. I think what Adam's done over the last kind of 6-7 years is kind of looked at everything, taken feedback on what people said about the gameplay, and really made it this streamlined effort. It feels like, as I mentioned earlier, you've got more agency, you have more control potentially on what your characters are doing. The characters can start to feel quite different depending on how they start, what you end up doing with them. There are command cards in the decks as well, which means that, if you play a command card, you can potentially dictate on a particular go what a lesser ranked team member is going to do, which obviously in the solo game doesn't really matter, but in the multiplayer game that can be that can be quite a significant thing as well. Look, it's it doesn't get away from a lot of the things that people don't like about Nemesis. As I say, the randomness, the fact you can be kicked out of the game fairly early, the fact that it is a game that you're playing to see potentially how far you can get with rather than how, on whether you can win. Look, Nemesis for me has always been about the journey and not the destination, and this is, again, I have these wonderfully cinematic moments as I play this game. Thematically, it makes a little bit more sense than Nemesis, because on Nemesis, you wake up on a ship and, nobody remembers the layout of the ship. You can't even remember it. Here, you're in a facility you don't even know. You've never been before, basically. So you're trying to work your way through the dark, and that facility is going to change each and every game. Looking at the Queen as well, you've got a far more intense threat in the Queen now, because you're going to have to go through this deck of cards and discard cards, etc. You're going to have to attack the Queen multiple times to actually defeat the Queen. It feels thematically more on point, and as I mentioned, the swarming nature of the Xenos as they start literally coming out of the walls towards you. It just feels so intense at times. You get completely overwhelmed and you don't see a path through, and then suddenly you can do something because they've introduced the mechanic or the mechanisms of the grenade and the burst as well. There's the burst die as well, which allows you to shoot into those corridors and just get rid of some of them, potentially clearing a path for you. The robot I find just okay. I understand why it's there, and some robots are more helpful than other robots as well, depending on where you are and what objectives you've got. But yeah, I find it okay. It's not necessarily a required addition to the Nemesis universe, but I understand why it's there. It does provide a little bit of help when, again, things just seem to be a little bit overwhelming for you. So I think I played this like 6 times now. I've won once, and I would gladly play this at any point with anybody, because it has become, no word of a lie, my favourite way to play Nemesis. I still have this deep love for the original Nemesis because of my love of Alien, because of my introduction to it so early in my board game journey. It just ticks a lot of the boxes. But this just feels, I don't know, it just feels more intense, more thematically intense. There's a reason for things to happen on here, and it just feels that swarming nature. It just feels like so overwhelming at times. I really enjoyed Lockdown. I would play Lockdown at any point, but Lockdown, despite being a mechanically better game than the original Nemesis, just didn't quite give me that love that I got from the original Nemesis. And it's not a disappointing game by any stretch of the imagination, but I still would always go to the original Nemesis. And now I have these 2 choices. Is it going to be Nemesis? Is it going to be Retaliation? Nemesis, because of my love of the original Alien, it's almost there, but this has fast become, as I mentioned, my preferred way to play it. I think that, as I said earlier, if you didn't like Nemesis originally, for many of the reasons that I've stated, then it's not going to change your mind. It's not going to be the overwhelming thing that's going to bring you back, because it's still got all of those elements in there. And therefore, if Nemesis games have never appealed to you, then, or you played them and they didn't work because of very specific reasons, then chances are some of those very specific reasons are still in here, and it's not going to be for you. However, if you're a huge fan of Nemesis, or if you enjoy playing Nemesis, then I can't tell you just how good this feels. It feels like both a step and a streamlined at the same time. It feels I keep going back to having more agency, and the game just gives you that little bit more to go at, and the ever-changing state of the modular board is fantastic, and it feels thematically on point. I will say it's going to take up a lot of table space, potentially more than the original Nemesis, because you've now got this frame, and your exploration of the corridors and the various rooms can go a number of ways on this frame. It has parameters where it can stay within, but so you'll always have a maximum space, but it does take up a hell of a lot of board, a hell of a lot of table space. And I can imagine that if you've got 4 people playing Nemesis, then you're going to need a fairly big table to play. Or sorry, playing Retaliation, then you're going to need a fairly big table to play it on. Look, tension. The horde nature, the scene setting, the not knowing what's round the next corner exploration, the sheer cinematic moments you get from it. It ticks every box for me as a Nemesis fan, aficionado, whatever you want to say. I am so overwhelmed with just how this looks. It is my new favourite way to play Nemesis. I think it is, for me, the best iteration of Nemesis, and I cannot wait to see the final version of it. So please go and check it out. As a solo gamer, you know, if you love that kind of tension building, you could play it pure solo. Of course you do. I always like to play 2 characters just to get that interplay between them. You could play it true solo, absolutely no problem whatsoever. You'd have one objective to do and then, you know, try to escape in the many different ways, be that the escape shuttle or on the landing zone or some of the escape pods, etc. You know, try and escape as well as complete your objectives and not getting contaminated at the same time. Yeah, good luck to your solo. But for me, it is just this wonderful experience that has been on my table for the best part of 2 weeks now. I finish a game, I think, yeah, okay, yeah, do I need to play something else? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to set it up and I'm going to spend another anywhere from 45 minutes to maybe 90 minutes, depending on what happens when I'm playing it, having this wonderful cinematic adventure that reminds me so much of the franchise that I love, that is everything that I wanted it to be and more in terms of just the streamlining and the worthwhile additions that it gives to it. So I think it's fantastic. I think Adam has done a tremendous job here. Really looking forward to seeing the final version. So there we go. That's a pretty glowing review, I understand, of Nemesis Retaliation. It is, if you love Nemesis, you're in for a treat. If Nemesis never worked for you, it's probably not going to be for you, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine, but I think it's fantastic. So thank you very much for watching me on this journey through Nemesis Retaliation prototype version 2.0, I believe. It's great. I love it. And I hope you guys love it too. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. One final thought. If you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.